I'm here with Wade Allison. He is a professor of physics at Oxford University. Could you explain a bit about your background and what you do to our readers?
Well, I've taught physics and mathematics and everything all my life at Oxford and done research at CERN and places, and a few years ago I started a course on applications of nuclear physics, and this very quickly got me into medical imaging and radiotherapy and all sorts of exciting places, and the students found this very productive. So I put more effort into it and wrote a book on the subject, and at the end of that I realised that there's something very peculiar going on, that the level of radiation we're supposed to be scared of in the environment is 1,000 times, depends how you measure it, but something like 1,000 times lower than what people accept as good for their health when they have radiation for their own health. So I thought I ought to write a book on that, and that is when I started trying to talk to the public and get things across without the benefit of equations, which is very hard, much easier with equations.
Yes, and that of course is why you're here today. It's the Sustainable Nuclear Energy Conference run by ICME, and you did in fact give a presentation about why you think basically that we shouldn't fear radiation quite as much as we do. Why do you think the public is so frightened of radiation?
Well, radiation is big. Nuclear radiation, nuclear energy is up to 1 million times more energetic than fossil fuel energy, than chemical energy. And so it's not surprising that it's a bit frightening, but biology, life, has had 1,000 million years and more to sort out how it's going to live with radiation and the other forms of radiation damage, all of which are basically oxidative damage to DNA, and it's got multiple safety mechanisms, repair mechanisms, replacement mechanisms, incredibly clever. This is what biology does. And the safety industry has completely written off everything that biology has done with its 1,000 million years of experience to safeguard our lives. And that's very unfortunate and quite wrong.
Tell us about Goiania in Brazil and what happened there.
Well, in Goiania there was a radioactive source which was being used for medicine, for health in fact, but it was very, very intense. 50.7 terabecquerel, so that's 50.7 million decays per second.
Right.
And this was in a redundant hospital which was broken into by some scrap metal merchants looking for bits of metal to recycle, and they saw this radiotherapy unit and they took it home and they broke it open, and they weren't very well educated, but that wasn't their fault. They broke it open and they found this material inside which emitted a blue light, presumably by ionizing the air around it, and so the children said, "Ooh, that's rather nice," and they painted their faces with it, and they got it all over the kitchen and all over the house and all over the outside of the house, and they invited their neighbours in to see this extraordinary sight and admire what they had found. And then of course they started to get ill, and in fact 249 people were seriously affected, and the question is, I should say 4 of those did die of acute radiation syndrome within a few days. But what happened after that? Because that was 1987, so that's more than 25 years ago. how many people of those people have died of a cancer? And the answer is none. And I've actually managed to get hold of the doctor who reported to the medical doctor who reported to the IAEA in Vienna as recently as last March, and I've got his slides from that presentation, so I can confirm that that is the case.
Well, there you go. Much of nuclear safety in the world is based on a LARA, as low as reasonably achievable. So I'm guessing you think that that's wrong.
I think that's totally wrong. If I build a bridge, I don't say what is the lightest vehicle that can go across it. I say what is the heaviest vehicle that can go across it without any risk of any damage. So what we have to do with radiation is not to say how little radiation can we get, but how much radiation can we get and suffer no ill effects whatsoever. And well, one can argue about the details and the factors of 2 and 3 here and there and when you get it and so on, but about 100 millisieverts per month satisfies my criteria. And if you compare that with the as low as reasonably achievable, the ALARA limit, there's about a factor of 1,000 difference between the two. If you believe that and follow that, then nobody need have been evacuated from Fukushima. They could have carried on with their work and their lives and eating their food, and the at least 1,000 people who have died just out of the negative effects of being moving old people and so on out of their homes, the drunkenness, the breakup of family life, the bedwetting of small children, all the examples of social stress which are built up by the inept application of nuclear safety regulations would not have occurred.
Yes, one of the things you mentioned about food earlier on was the limits that the Japanese government placed upon dosage from food, which was they lowered it in 2012 to 100 becquerels per kilogram, was sort of the maximum dose possible. Now, you also said that you'd need to eat 5 tons of that in 3 months to get the same dose of radiation that you would get from one CT scan. Now, people aren't scared of CT scans.
They certainly shouldn't. They certainly shouldn't be. That I should say that's not a very complicated calculation. It just involves multiplying a few numbers, some of which are fundamental constants, and the length of a month, and so on, and looking how long the radioactivity stays in your body, which is, on average is about 100 days, and just multiplying these together, and in fact to get the dose in millisieverts. When I did that, actually I got the same answer as I found that the Japanese government had got in the small print of the regulation that they had put out.
Right.
So there's nothing difficult or controversial about getting from the becquerels per kilogram to the radiation dose.
Yes. And of course, as you were saying, the social effects of radiation and the psychological effects of radiation could be far worse than the radiation itself.
Well, this is rather like a medieval curse. If you say to somebody, you have got the devil, then in 1500 that had the same effect as saying to people in 2011, you have been irradiated. And the effect on family life, you say that the children aren't allowed to go out of doors because of the radiation, they can't play. The children are shunned by the other children at school because they're thought to be radioactive. They're even denied admission to hospitals because of they're thought to be radioactive. The most awful things happen to people and between people as soon as you tell them that they've suffered radiation. even if it is completely wrong.
Yes. Why do governments put such a low limit on radiation, do you think?
Well, for two reasons. One is that they've all clubbed together to get the United Nations to put its fingerprint on the regulations, which of course is absolutely disastrous, and it's going to make it very difficult to reverse, but it's got to be reversed. The other thing is the governments want to get back into office, so they want to do what the people want, and when the people are frightened of something, the best way is to remove what they're frightened of. That is where a lawyer comes from, as low as reasonably achievable. We will take the radiation away from your life so you don't have to worry about it anymore. That's the wrong thing to do. What they need is education. They need to learn about what the problem is or isn't, not to be promised that it won't happen. That's appeasement.
Yes. So how do you think scientists, the research community, governments could improve or increase public trust in radiation, in nuclear energy?
It's got to happen from the bottom up. I think it's got to happen in primary schools of children learning about it and being told about it properly, not what the regulations are, but how and why it's all a good thing, and it's helpful and it's nice, and it's all to do with sunshine, ultraviolet and sunshine and so on. And then going home and telling their parents over the evening meal that this is what they learnt today. And then the parents' eyebrows will go up in surprise, and they will talk about it, but they won't listen to what their children say. More than probably they will listen to somebody pontificating on the TV. So, and then they will go down to the pub, and they will talk with their friends, and it will spread. It'll take quite a long time, but with sufficient leadership in the community, I'm sure it can be done. It's got to be done. It's rather important for the climate change problem that it is, because otherwise we're going to go on emitting carbon like the Japanese are at the moment.
Yes, which of course can, in some studies, has been shown to actually cause more deaths across the world than radiation has anyway.
Well, that's not difficult to show.
No. Wade Allison, thank you very much for speaking to TCA.
A pleasure.
Thank you.